This is the Healthy Business Podcast, the show for ambitious business owners who want to grow and scale in a healthy way. I'm Sarah Cook, and I'll be sharing with you tips, inspiration, and proven methods from leading business experts, entrepreneurs, and health and wellness professionals to help you grow your business with more income and having more impact, but in a way that works for you. Because when you have clarity and strategy, you can achieve the results you want. Welcome to the next episode of the Healthy Business Podcast, and I am super excited to have the lovely Katherine Byam, who is joining me today. And Katherine is, well, she describes herself as the wing woman to your genius. So excited to be delving into what that means for her, but also what that potentially could mean for you as well. So Katherine, we've known each other, probably about 18 months now, a year and a half, I guess. And our paths have crossed in lots of different ways. And she is really known for being, I guess, a strategic partner to leaders. She helps businesses grow, but she is super passionate about doing things in a sustainable way. So we're going to be delving into the world of LinkedIn, but also sustainability. And I can't wait to see where this conversation goes. So Katherine, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Sarah. It's really a pleasure to be on this podcast. And the Healthy Business Podcast is something that I'm passionate about, even if on my personal side, I still need to do some work there.
Well, that leads me into then. So quite often where I start with a lot of my guests is, what does a healthy business mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's really about how sustainable this business is from all the different angles. Is it sustainable to continue into the future? Are you doing things that actually work for the planet or for the people in the planet, people in your community? Is your business stakeholder relevant as opposed to shareholder relevant? So those things are really fundamental to how I do business and how I guide leaders. And then the other side, of course, is you as a person in that business, right? And you have to be, first of all, doing things in your business that make sense for you and make sense for the people you're with, but also it needs to be fundamentally something that sustains your life. And that's probably one of the hardest balances to get as an entrepreneur, as you well know.
It is. It certainly can be, can't it? I think that's the aspirational goal that lots of us kind of work towards, is having that balance of, the lifestyle, the financial style, and just that balance between, or equilibrium, as I like to call it, of time, money, and lifestyle, because they're so intrinsic to how we enjoy our business, how we enjoy our lives, and it's really important that we kind of work across all three of those different areas. So before we delve into kind of a little bit more about what you do and how you help people, wing woman to your genius, what a claim. I love this. Tell me more about where that's come from and what that means for you as well.
Yeah, I mean, when I got started in business, so this is taking a big step back. When I got started in business, I didn't really know enough about branding and marketing to really start on a strong footing. So I came up with a business name. It was me and my partner. So that already created a need for something outside of a personal brand, because we're both so very different. He's a data scientist and I'm really into change management and strategy. And we think very differently about things as well. So we had to create this business brand that represented both of us. And I didn't really work on the personal brand. And as I went through working with different clients, I started to realize something, that my clients were mainly corporate, and they didn't necessarily want people to know that someone was behind them doing things behind the scenes. And I thought to myself, oh, this is interesting, because it seems like what people want in this space is someone who's sort of, a secret, like a secret genie in a bottle, so to speak, or someone that no one else sees, but gives them really great advice, has great experience, and can help them shine. So I thought, okay, that seems to be who I am. And interestingly, the minute I changed it on LinkedIn, I've had so many comments about it, like so many people just commenting that they love it and that it seems so appropriate for me. And I think that also comes from having done a lot of back office type of roles. So I've always been sort of the accountant. So again, at the side of the CEO, or internal audit, so at the side of the board audit committee, or supply chain capability and development and change management, so at the side of the head of supply chain. So it's also developed from the roles I've done in my corporate life as well.
It's amazing. I think you're right. And it's such a great conversation starter as well, isn't it? Which is, when we're talking about being visible and social media, having those connections, having those conversations is really where it starts when you're building a kind of a client base and, building potential clients as well. So yeah, it's a great idea, I think. And as you said, it really does sum up what you do and supports people in getting their genius out there even more.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because I think that initially, you think that you need this great branding, and it's probably true that you do, but sometimes you have to discover it. And that's kind of what happened with me in this journey. It's like, yes, this was true for me for 20 years, but I kind of discovered that this was a magical phrase as
Yeah.
I went through and developed my business. So don't
And I
worry
think
if
what
you
you
haven't
just said
started
there is
yet.
that it's your journey, it's your experience. And when we lean into that, that's normally when the magic happens, isn't it?
Exactly, exactly.
Okay, so talking LinkedIn, that's where you, I guess, have focused your time for your growing your business, because that's, you work a lot with corporate people. And LinkedIn actually isn't just about corporate, is it? I think a lot of people assume that, LinkedIn is that place for people to find corporate jobs, whereas actually it's a huge opportunity that is at the moment pretty untapped for people in the entrepreneurial space.
Yeah, I would say that there's quite a mix. And I think fundamentally, I think about LinkedIn as this huge networking event that never ends. And I think if you approach it like that, you start to see the platform very differently. So, whenever you show up, there are people on there from different spheres, etc., that you can start a conversation with. And it's about engaging on people's posts, engaging on the feed, and really starting to get a feel for who your people are. And I think if you understand that, you'll learn how to sort of curate your feed better. You'll learn how to connect with the right people for you, and it's really open to anyone. I think that the bigger the organization, probably the more time and the more value they get from LinkedIn. So if you have an organization with more than 5 to 10 employees, LinkedIn starts to make a lot of sense, because your employees attract people to your business also. So it's really interesting how that has evolved, but that's probably why people have that feeling that it's more corporate, because the more employees you have, the better it works for you in general. But
It's that
also,
multiplier effect.
exactly. And if you really understand how to tap into all of that, it can work for anyone.
Amazing. And how have you kind of grown? Because obviously sustainability is something that you're really passionate about, and something that makes complete sense when you're growing a business. As you say, it is part of running a healthy business, is looking at that sustainability in all different facets. How has LinkedIn enabled you to build up and kind of connect with people from that side of things?
Yeah, I think to start with, I think I started my LinkedIn journey when I was completing my MBA in 2016. And we had this session on personal development. And at the time, I was using it, but not a lot. And I kind of realized when I started to write articles in that year that actually people want to see value. They want to learn value from other people, and they want to have a source of trusted information. So once I started to do these articles, I started to realize that there's a space on this platform for advocacy work, and things that are informing people about stuff that they may not have learned about previously. And these are the types of people that I started to follow. So I curated my list of people. I found the people that I thought were really interesting and relevant to the things I was interested in. Got them engaging on my stuff, and realized, yeah, this platform is quite powerful for this. And as you grow and learn, and as you use it as a network, you start attracting those people. So in a way, right now, I have maybe roughly half of my feed is people in the sustainability space who are sharing their topics, sharing their journey, sharing their networking events, their discussion panels, etc., to help people learn more about the topic. And there's so much emerging right now, and it's such a vast space of innovation at the moment, that it's really exciting. I mean, for me, I get excited about what I see out there. Last night, I had a session with a couple of friends, and one lady was talking about how we understand animals, as an example, and how we understand wildlife. And we don't necessarily think about the animals as being contributing members to our economy. But in reality, for example, the work that bees do contributes to our wider economy. And how do you value that? How do you value that economic contribution of the bees? And when you start having conversations like this, there's no limit to where it goes, right? So I found that using this for advocacy is such a powerful place. And the kind of ideas, it's like massive TED talk on scale, massive networking on scale. I really love it.
It's just fascinating, isn't it? And I think, busting that myth that LinkedIn is that kind of corporate workspace, that actually these incredible conversations can happen with people who you might never have met before or you wouldn't normally meet in your everyday life. I mean, for me, that's the brilliance about networking, whether it's the online space, offline space, having chats with my podcast guest experts, because the conversations that I have, or, you get to have when you're doing these things and opening yourself up to that, is amazing. And you can have, for me, it also then gives that creativity space that you can then bring back into your business, of just different ways of looking at things, or people's experience can help you grow in a different way. And we're all on this entrepreneurial evolving journey, which we don't, in all honesty, know where it's going to go. To a certain extent, we've all got our goals, we've all got our visions, we all know how we want to grow our business, but actually opportunities can arise which can take us in different space. And I think being open to that, having that sort of growth mindset rather than a very fixed mindset, can lead us into these potential opportunities, these conversations. And yeah, you don't know who you're going to connect with, but you can be quite targeted with who, as you say, having your feed that's half filled with people who have similar interests, have similar values. That's the key bit, isn't it? Because you can speak to anybody, and that's also interesting. But actually, if you're quite intentional with how you spend your time and who you spend that with, that's when you can get the results in your business. And I think that's kind of what I want to delve into a little bit more, if that's okay, because these conversations can be incredible. As you say, talking about bees and how their impact on our economy is just fascinating. But it has to feel aligned to your business in a certain way. Like, you have to be curating those conversations or putting yourself in the right place to enable you to have conversations like that. So how would someone do that? So if they are completely fresh to LinkedIn, how would someone kind of think, okay, this is the type of person I want to connect with? Where do they start?
Yeah. So I would start by saying, just be open. Just be open and gentle with yourself at the beginning. I think that there's a lot of sort of barriers to entry for a lot of people because of that corporate feel of LinkedIn. But really, if you were to approach it as, I can just show up, put my content in there, and create a profile that's magnetic, sometimes that's just the first step, and all you probably need to do for a while. So if you think that it's intimidating to produce a whole bunch of different content for different platforms, etc., just take the first step, which is to create a magnetic and a magnificent profile. And the thing about profiles on LinkedIn, and LinkedIn as a platform in general, it is of itself a fantastic search engine. So if you wanted to find out about people and things that are related to you, you can find it very easily. But beyond that, it also shows up very highly on Google and Bing. So if you wanted to really show up there, prove your validity and your authority as a business owner, probably your LinkedIn is going to come up very high, and people are going to check it because they want to know that you're legit, and LinkedIn gives you some legitimacy. So that's the first bit. The other thing is building out your profile. There are about 20 areas of your profile that you can literally optimize for SEO on platform and off platform. And if you were to do those things, you would suddenly have something that attracts people, that gets inbound inquiries without even having done a post. Okay, maybe you need to do one or two posts, but, but you don't need to do the number of posts you need to do on Instagram, for example. And as we mentioned, Instagram, I find that even though you think it's intimidating, it's becoming a lot more like Instagram than you think. So there's a lot of content now on LinkedIn that's a bit fun, that's a bit engaging, that's a bit catchy. Carousels even work on LinkedIn. So yeah, open your mind is basically what I would say. Open your mind, and definitely don't think that you need to do it the way someone else has. Yeah. So
That's
if you
interesting.
yeah, if you can curate a profile that feels good to your ideal audience, that's already, half the magic happening already.
Yeah, it's so true, I think, isn't it? That Actually, it is about standing out. Yes, it's important to be visible. We know that when we're doing our marketing, we have to be consistent, we have to show up, we have to be visible. But actually doing it in a way that not just works for you, but doing it in a way that is authentic to you is really what makes you stand out. And actually, it's a lot easier to do that because it doesn't feel as energetically hard because actually you're showing up as you. And one of the things that I love about LinkedIn is that you can share your opinion. Like that's kind of what people are interested in. It doesn't have to be that, picture perfect, which everyone seems to expect on Instagram. It's a lot more opinion led.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that I think really works on the platform as well is I like to tell people, think about how you want someone to feel after they've worked with you the first time. And that's what your profile needs to look like. You almost just need to take them one step from where they are. So you can't put out content that necessarily is exactly where they are. They need to see the step up. They need to see where they could be. And if your profile has been oriented around that messaging, it's quite powerful. And it doesn't matter who you are. You can just bring that to the table. You will attract the right people for you, for your business.
Amazing. It's such an interesting platform. And I think, I had those misconceptions, especially when I left the corporate world, that I didn't necessarily want to be on LinkedIn because it reminded me of that corporate space and that brought up all sorts of different things for me personally. But actually now that I'm much more in the entrepreneurial space and just seeing the opportunities there, and even people that I used to work with have connected with me. So it's still your network, even though you might be in a different space to where you were if you've left the corporate world and you now set up on your own, that network is still valid because even though you've changed and you're doing something different, those people might have changed, but also they know people who have also changed that might also need your services. And, I've just started working with a colleague from about 15 years ago when we were both in the pharmaceutical world. And we're now working together. She's become one of my clients. And it's really interesting. Had I not shown up on LinkedIn, we probably wouldn't have had that connection. And I think, yeah, it's really interesting to just have a slightly different mindset as to how LinkedIn can work for you in a different way to the social media platforms of Facebook and Instagram, which is a different social connection really.
Yeah, I would say that we need to curate a little bit the network that we have. So at times, well, probably it's just based on data and analytics at this point, what I'm going to say to you. But really, we need to make sure that the profile that we're building or the people that we're maintaining relationships with are active on the platform, because that really helps you with the data and reach of your posts, of your content. So do take some time to have a look at the existing connections that you have and see which ones probably don't need to remain. It might seem rough at the beginning because you're thinking, oh my God, I can't disconnect from that friend. But sometimes they're just not showing up on the platform. So it's really good to have a check to see who's active, who's not active, and probably clean up your feed a little bit. And that way you then get something that really reaches the noises and makes the voices that you want to reach.
Okay, so we've kind of spoken a little bit around content that you could put out there or your profile that should be up there, and also the people who you're connected with. What other things should people be aware of, or should people be kind of looking out for to enhance their visibility really on LinkedIn and using that as a platform to help them grow?
Yeah, I think a big tip would be around your own data on the platform. So LinkedIn has a way of measuring your performance. It's called the social selling index, and that gives you a score from 0 to 100, which says how you are relative to the rest of your network, how you are relative to your industry for the work that you do. And if you understand that score and how to move that score, it then unlocks things for you. So unlike other platforms, you don't get things by paying for them per se. So it's not necessarily that you pay for ads and you get a different type of access. With LinkedIn, it really is an eligibility thing. So as you get to a point of proving yourself, proving that you're doing the right things that the platform likes, fundamentally, they then give you things like doing lives or acceptance to do courses or anything like this. So you really have to think about how you manage that score and you get that score raised so that you can make the most of the platform. Of course, you can still get benefit from the platform without it, but if you really want support and backing of the network, you have to make some tweaks.
I love that because in some ways you're creating your own algorithm, whereas the other social media platforms, they're kind of dictating for you and it's not based on, anything to do with authority or anything like that.
Yes.
Um, and yeah, as you say, you have to pay to get seen on Facebook pretty much, unless from a business page side of things. Whereas on LinkedIn, you can be quite intentional with your actions, quite intentional with your posts, your articles, etc., which enable you to get that credibility and then have access to more things. That's so interesting, I think.
Yeah, I'm not actually sure how they I guess they're not managing. Oh, sorry, I'm going to just repeat that. I guess it's not as important for them to earn the money from the ads revenue as much as it is to gain the credibility of the platform. And that's probably the reason it's ranked higher than Facebook or any other social media in terms of trust. Of course, there's something else that comes with that. So there have been many voices. I know I'm a bit of an activist for minorities and people of a BIPOC background, etc. And there have been voiced challenges around the voices of BIPOC people on the platform. And the platform has had to deal with that because the bias goes naturally to people who if there are more people from the US, for example, and there are more white people in the US, for example, then the Black voices get suppressed. So these are things that the platform has had to take head on and take the challenge and push back and try to figure out how to manage. But they try to do a meritocracy and realize that it's not as easy as a straightforward merit conversation. So these are some of the interesting things that happens on LinkedIn. That's why I love it.
Yeah, it is so interesting, isn't it? And I think it almost goes back to your sort of passion on the sustainability side of things as well, that actually it's about building a business that is aligned to your values just as much as it's about building that network that is aligned to your values and being associated with platforms that also are looking to do that as well. And I think that's true in whatever niche or industry or passion value that you have, that you can share those views, share your opinions. And because it's such an opinion based platform, they are quite open to that. And also, as you said, it then attracts those people to you, which is also really key.
Exactly. Sorry. Sorry, exactly. I think from a DEI perspective, there's so much on there in terms of advocacy work. It's all levels of sustainability comes into the mix. So I follow sometimes some people who really talk about assigned female at birth versus assigned male at birth and having that inclusion language that covers people who may not want to identify as female or male. And these are just important things that we need to understand. I saw a show just incidentally on Netflix talking about the 14th Amendment in the US and how that made it easier for the Black rights conversation to happen in the US, for women to gain equality in the US, and then for people who from the LGBTQIA community to gain their rights to marry, etc. But all because people were prepared to stand on a platform and talk about this and rally people and get that support. So if you have something that's worth the advocacy conversation, bring it to this platform. I mean, Twitter is also generally good at this, but it's very short term. Whereas LinkedIn, that conversation can go on for a bit and really help you to rally the support that you need.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And I think you're right. There are so many different ways that you can use a social media platform to not just share your views, to share your opinions, to connect with other people. Um, and you mentioned equality there as well. And I think it's it's one of those interesting terms where everyone has a different opinion as to what equality actually means, don't they? And for me, it's about having that level playing field. It's It's not about one versus another. It's just about having that level playing field. And, even me from my story and coming up with growing up with a very male dominated, very competitive environment, and that traditional value as to, yes, women can be successful, but at some point they have to compromise and have a family. That became really interesting as to kind of where I challenged my values and things like that as well. And I think where I came to is that actually it wasn't about me competing against my brothers or my cousins or my family. It was actually about me. It was about who I wanted to be, how I wanted to be perceived, but also that real self-worth. And it wasn't at the expense of them. It was about having that level playing field, that actually, if I wanted to go and do something, I had access to those things that would enable me to go and do it, rather than it being prioritized to somebody else, whoever that was. I mean, my situation is kind of using that male example, but obviously yours is a very different example. And I think your backstory is amazing, from where you've come and how you moved to the UK, but also your sort of travels and your sort of corporate experience as well. And if you're open to kind of sharing that, because I think, because we're kind of delving into this equality, and also I think with the importance of LinkedIn allowing us to do that and have those conversations, I think it could be really interesting if we kind of delve into your backstory a little bit as well, if you're okay to do that.
Yeah, sure. No, and I think I want to touch on something that you said as well before I get into my backstory. But I think that sport is one of the best examples of advocacy work going well, in terms of particularly the women in tennis, who
Yes.
have really changed the game and changed the conversation, and now the women in football who are doing the same. And it's great to have those sorts of examples where it has been successful, and that people can see that they can contribute equally to people's enjoyment,
Yeah.
first of all. That then brings the conversation of change to other places. So I really rally around women in sport. I think you guys have done so much for all of us as women. Um, in terms of my own story, and I think I want to start there with this concept of intersectionality. I don't know if many people have ever heard of the term, but it's really about when you have multiple ways in which you are a minority. So, for example, an intersectionality could be being Black and female. So perhaps the first bit of rights that came to the world and the Western world was Black men being able to vote. Then it was women being able to vote. But then Black women struggled with a glass ceiling in the office space. In fact, I think we still struggle today. And this is one of the things that has fueled a lot of what I do now in my work. So when I left Trinidad and Tobago, I'd accomplished roughly 5 promotions in my 10 years in the multinational company that I worked in. And then I moved to the UK on a promotion, expecting my career to continue to grow. And then for the next 10 years, I could not seem to get beyond that position that I had attained when I moved. And that's incredibly frustrating for someone ambitious, especially coming from a country where I was not a minority. So I came from Trinidad and Tobago. I was another Black woman in a place of strong Black women. So coming to a place where suddenly I couldn't go up, this was a problem. And what I did was I decided, okay, if you won't let me go up, I'm going to move across and I'm going to move around. So I changed roles several times. I moved from finance to internal audit to logistics to planning, in order to build my knowledge around all things business. I traveled a lot, as you mentioned. So I've been to roughly 30 countries for work. And in those countries, they've been, usually the case has been that they are developing countries, or what is called the global south. And I don't know how I feel about these terms. We always come up with these terms to make it easy to talk about things that we're uncomfortable to talk about. But one of the terms is global south, or developing countries. And what I saw there, and as an internal auditor as well, you get to see how big companies support or not the relationships with the locals in these organizations, etc., and how even the private institutions or social entrepreneurship sort of supporting systems help these people to lift or raise their profiles to get fairer contracts, etc. So I played a lot in that space in my sort of first 3 years in the UK. And that really opened my mind to doing something more, to possibly shifting my ambition to getting to the top of the company, to making a difference and having an impact. And that's why I started in the space. And I went off to do the MBA, and that even opened my eyes far more to understand how, a bit more about the backstory of how we became the rich West, and what happened to make that happen, and how we need to rethink economics. So one of the great things that I would recommend if you're interested in looking at economics from a different way is a TED talk by a woman called Kate Rayworth, and it's called Donut Economics. She also wrote a book, and it really explains a very different way to look at an economy, to value the services of people and animals, as we spoke about, that are not necessarily monetized, and how important it is to the experience of the world that we have. And I advocate in particular for decent work and economic growth, and how we achieve that and bring everyone along. And so I'm definitely the kind of person who stands up for people who I feel are being trod upon by a system that doesn't work. And that's how I came to this place.
Yeah, I love it. And do you know, it's so interesting because I came into marketing and I came into the world of travel because I was just fascinated about how and why people do certain things. You know, from a marketing perspective, why do we buy certain brands over others? It's so personal to a certain extent. Similarly, from a travel perspective, I've always found it really interesting how different cultures do things in different ways. And yeah, one of the reasons that I love to explore the different places, and one of the reasons that I wanted to live in Asia and did for so long, is that actually our way of doing things isn't necessarily the right way of doing things, and that's the same for wherever we are in the world. But what we can do is learn from each other and learn how different people do things in different ways and why. And being, again, it goes back to that growth mindset. It's about being open to different things. It's about being open to our way isn't always the right way. And if we can challenge our own beliefs, challenge our own thoughts, look at what other people are doing. And I'm going to bring this back into LinkedIn again, because that is where, if we're not able to travel, and obviously a lot of people haven't been able to over the last 18 months, but an online space where you can have these conversations, you can have these connections with people who are open to having those conversations and looking at exploring how we could potentially do things differently. And I don't just mean this from a, way of business working or, changing the world if we want to go to that high level. It can be about really small things, and it's about the bits that you're interested in, the bits that you're passionate about, and creating and curating your network, your feed that brings all of that interest and brings all of that information back to you. And especially when we're running our own business, it can feel quite lonely, can't it? And having that connection with other people who are like-minded, who maybe stretch your thinking, that open you up to different things, that's the bit that I get really excited about and I love doing. And that's why I love having these conversations, because I think especially LinkedIn, out of all the social media platforms, it allows you to do that. It allows you to have those, to a certain extent, non-judgmental conversations. But because it's opinion led, you can really delve into some things. You can challenge people, but it's all done from a place of let's stretch, let's grow, rather than let's just kind of cut people down, which you don't see so much.
Yeah, yeah. I would say that LinkedIn, as any other platform, has the people who don't necessarily want to have an open conversation.
Yeah.
So don't expect it to be all a bed of roses, but there are way more open conversations on that platform than you tend to see elsewhere. I find on my feed in Facebook, people tend to put out opinions that are very polarizing. So like, if you don't like what I have to say, you can unfollow me,
Yeah.
right? They don't want to have a conversation about it. Whereas on LinkedIn, people expect to have a tough conversation at times. And the platform does try to help manage the trolls, etc. So you can manage that. If comments are really getting to a point of degenerative, you can take it off your feed, etc. But I think that having those conversations is, as you say, how we grow. And if you're not prepared to debate a topic, I don't know how we solve all problems in the world. The other thing I wanted to talk about that you touched on is this idea that the West can learn from the East, or the global North can learn from the global South. And there are so many things in the innovation space that are coming from pure frugality, as well as from observing nature in more detail. So we've always observed nature to develop our innovations. We always have used nature as a source of innovation, but now we're starting to understand far more about microbiomes, for example, about organisms, bacteria, viruses, etc., that can help us to break down plastics, to solve real world problems. And it's only through being prepared to get dirty, to get into the detail, do we get to that point. So I would say we need to think about how we leapfrog some steps. So one of the conversations I recently had on a panel around sustainability for Hampshire was around this idea of, do we move today from sort of our diesel and petrol cars to electric cars? Or do we skip all that and we go straight to sort of shared transportation, self-driver or driverless cars, etc., where we reduce the need to own and produce another new vehicle, right? Because we're in a situation, I embarrassingly still drive a diesel car, but there's a reason for that. I've already spent the money on it because I actually took it secondhand from my company. It was one of the benefits that I got, and I decided not to buy a new one. And here I am not really using my car because of COVID, etc. But if I sell that car to someone else, I still create that problem, right? I still have the problem of a diesel car on the road. I'd much prefer someone told me, retrofit your car, right? We can come in, we will do something with your car, pay some money, and then drive out with an electric vehicle, right? So I do think we need to think differently about the solution. And I think buying new electric cars is not necessarily, it's going to help, but it's not necessarily the amount of help we need to have by 2030 if we wanted to reverse climate change. But there's just so much that you can get into.
You know what I picked up from there though is that need to think differently. And so whatever it is, whether things aren't quite going right in your business, being open to challenging yourself, being open to say, okay, let's do some analysis. Let's see how we could do things differently. Let's see how other people are doing things that could work for us. It's one of the reasons that I set up this podcast, is that actually we're all growing, we're all learning from different things. And if we're open to that, we can make some real quick changes that have long lasting effect. And also I think it doesn't necessarily have to be, big grand scale changes overnight. That compound effect of small tweaks and little changes over time can actually have a huge impact on, your business results, how you look at things, how you show up, anything that it is, whether it's, going back to our health and how we act and our mindset. There's so many different ways that we can kind of look at this when we're talking healthy business, and we're talking, LinkedIn growth and organic growth and making connections, having those conversations. But it all comes back to that connection, the conversations, being open to different thoughts, different ideas. And we can't do that if we don't make that first step into having those conversations. Yeah. Amazing. Oh my goodness, we've covered so many things today. It's been fantastic.
Yeah, I think I want to steal a phrase from a very good friend of mine, Deep Badwa, who did a talk recently on Be Inspired about connected selling. And for me, that's fundamentally what LinkedIn is about, right? It's really about being connected to the people that you're going to work with, and really treating them as peers, as equals, who you're sharing your skills with, and you're sharing this journey of life with. And if you approach the platform like that, I can't see how you don't grow.
Amazing. That feels like a good place to kind of summarize everything, doesn't it? What a great quote. What I would like to do as a kind of a final thing is, if someone is wanting to use LinkedIn or wanting to kind of delve into it a little bit, take those first baby steps. You mentioned a couple of things about getting your profile sorted, but what would be your kind of top 3, top 5 tips for people to get started on using LinkedIn to help them with their business?
Yeah, so I would say create a brand experience on that top line of your profile. So, just as you would on a web page, the first banner that people see when they click on a web page, you optimize that messaging at the top. I would say do the same with your LinkedIn. So make sure that the background behind your photo as well, are all optimized to communicate the message that you want to communicate. And I recommend making that message what you want people to feel after one instance of working with you. And if you can get that messaging right, it's already half the battle. I would also say optimize your headline. And you'll see a lot of things in terms of headlines out there. I think at the moment, one headline is kind of overused, which is I help so-and-so with so-and-so. I would actually suggest that you put a little bit of your credibility first. So, and it could even be your impact statement, right? So mine is the wing woman to your genius. Put a bit of that impact statement first, your credibility, and then get into how you help, because there are lots of people who offer lots of services who may not be as credible as you are. Mm-hmm. So make sure you have your credibility marker, but then do communicate how you help people. And maybe the third one would be really curate that connection request that you're doing. Make sure to check that those people are active on the platform, make sure to check that they are relevant to you. This requires understanding your ideal client and how to find them on LinkedIn. So make sure you've done that work, but that would also really help you to make that impact that you want.
Amazing. And if you are stuck on your ideal client, go back and look at the previous episode that I did specifically on ideal client, because that will help you just get a bit more clarity. Thank you so much, Katherine. It's been amazing chatting to you. And as I said, we've covered all sorts of different subjects. If people do want to find out a little bit more about you or connect with you on LinkedIn, where is the best place to find you?
Yeah, definitely. You can reach out at Katherine Byam on LinkedIn. Just do a search for me. I'm there. I think I'm the only one, actually. It's cool to have a name that you're pretty unique with. And I have a link tree in there where I have all my services, all the things that I do, the various things that I do and ways that I help people. I also have a group called Women in Sustainable Business on Facebook. So it supports women who want to pivot to sustainability or who are already there. So if you wanted to check that out, you're free to join. There are about 3,400 women in there, so you're welcome to join us.
Oh, fantastic. Well, as I said, thank you so much. It's been a brilliant conversation, and I feel like we could have delved into all sorts of different areas. I feel like I need to get you back on for another episode. Thank you for listening. If you have got any feedback, any questions, we would love to hear them. So do reach out, leave us a review, and I will see you on the next episode. Thanks for listening to the Healthy Business Podcast. To get your free checklist with 1-minute hacks to accelerate your business and find out more about our community, head to my website, sarahcookmarketing.com/healthybusiness.